Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, back with another video. So, as you guys know, I've been away for a while, so we've got quite a bit of stuff to catch up on in this video, so this will probably turn out to be quite a long one. I wasn't actually going to make a video today, this just came to me kind of out of left field. I had a little bit of time on my hands, and I figured why not talk about the boxing that's been happening the past couple of weeks, because I've been paying attention, I just haven't had the ability to make videos. So yeah, there's a lot going on in my mind right now, and there's a lot I want to catch up on. So yeah, if I get a little bit sidetracked with this video, just remember I'm very, very busy, and a lot of this is just straight off the top of my head. So I want to talk about the, I guess you could call it, obligatory trilogy that we have now with Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. Of course, as anybody who's watching this will know, a couple of weeks back we had the second fight with Bivol winning by majority decision, and it was essentially a exact repeat of the first fight. You know, very close competitive fight with Beterbiev more than likely doing enough to win, except this time he didn't get the decision. Now, those of you who saw my sort of post-fight video that I made about the first fight, you'll know my views on it. I thought it was a pretty clear and conclusive victory for Beterbiev. I don't think the fight was as close as people were making it out. I thought it was a pretty comfortable and clear win by any objective scoring criteria. It's just that it wasn't quite as destructive as we were all expecting. I think most of us on here who understand boxing and who had followed the careers of both guys felt that Beterbiev was going to be able to break Bivol and force a late stoppage. Now, those of you who saw my, I guess you could call it, post-fight review, the video I made sort of in the aftermath of that fight, you might have noticed that I did something that I don't normally do on this channel, and I have a bit of a confession to make here. So, the way that I normally do things on here, I'm not usually too concerned about what people think. I'm not usually too concerned about how my opinions and views on a particular fight are perceived, how they match up with the mainstream and all that good stuff, and who it doesn't upset or offend. I'm not usually too fussed or concerned about that. I usually just tell it like it is. If I believe a fight went a particular way, or I have a particular opinion on a fight, I'm usually just open and honest about it, regardless of the aggro it gets me. But I have a bit of confession to make. For that first Bivol-Beterbiev fight, I was a little bit, I won't say disingenuous in the aftermath of the fight, but what I will say is I definitely had myself on a bit of a leash with how I summed up how that fight went. So the fight was, you know, you guys know my opinion on it. Again, clear, conclusive win for Beterbiev. I don't really think it was that close, if truth be told. I definitely don't think it was as close as people were saying. I thought it was a pretty clear, conclusive decision win for Beterbiev, where he sort of quietly dominated the fight, landing the more significant, effective shots. You know, the shots that meant something, the shots that actually forced the opponent to move or got the opponent into a compromising position and all that good stuff. I just thought it was a very good performance from Beterbiev from sort of a tactical and strategic point of view. But the problem is, and I was dying, absolutely dying to say this in the aftermath of the first fight, but I didn't do it. And the reason why I didn't do it is because I was kind of concerned about kind of pouring cold water on the fight. Because I'm still somewhat sentimental, I guess you could say, about these Eastern European fighters and what they represent to boxing. You know, I like Dmitry Bivol for all the times I've criticised him. I like Artur Beterbiev for all the times I've criticised him. I like that the fight happened. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the fight. In fact, I watched it about 5 times. So, yeah, it was a fight that I liked, and I'm glad that it happened. It was a significant fight for boxing and a significant fight for the light heavyweight division. So I didn't really want to say anything too negative about it in the aftermath. I just wanted to just take the fight for what it was. But after seeing how the second fight went, I can't hold back on it, guys. So what I wanted to say in the aftermath of the first fight is how the real winner, the real winner of that fight was the bookies, the casinos, the gambling industry. Because let's be perfectly honest, guys, nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, was picking or betting on Artur Beterbiev by decision, were they? Okay, the general wisdom going into the fight, the general narrative spread by both the boxing media and boxing fans across social media, and anybody who understood what both guys were capable of, the narrative was it was going to be either Beterbiev by knockout or Bivol by decision. That was going to be the outcome, for the general casual observers. It was one or the other, right? Nobody thought Beterbiev was going to win the fight on points. So obviously there was very little money coming in on that result, was there? It's a little bit convenient, isn't it, how the fight happens and Beterbiev, who is a seek and destroy type of fighter, a guy, I know he's 40 years old and all that, but look, he's, for your average 40-year-old, he's in pretty good shape. I mean, he didn't really look to me like he left anything in the tank in the 12th round of that first fight, Oh, what am I saying? He didn't look to me like he had nothing left in the tank, is what I meant to say. He didn't look to me like he went out there and sold out and couldn't give any more. Beterbiev looked to me like he very much could have done more than he did and could have very much applied more pressure than he did. And it was very out of character for Beterbiev when he's fighting a guy who can't hurt him. Okay, Dmitry Bivol is not a knockout puncher. He's not a knockout artist. He's an amateur point-scoring fighter. And if he can't dominate you behind a jab, he has to work very, very hard to keep you off him. Okay, and Bivol was boxing absolutely without his, out of his skin. It was a career-best performance from him. But Beterbiev was still able to get the better of him, okay, and was still able to get him where he wanted him. It's just that Beterbiev very, very uncharacteristically didn't step on the gas. You'd think when he realised Bivol couldn't hurt him, he would step on the gas and do exactly what he did in every other fight. If you look at the Callum Smith fight, Callum Smith, who is a similar level of fighter to Bivol, let's be honest, except a much bigger guy and a bigger puncher. Right, we saw him on the undercard against Boatsi. We saw that Callum Smith is a genuine world-class light heavyweight. So the fact that Beterbiev was able to get foot position on Callum Smith so quickly and was able to dominate him and break him down and shut him down so quickly is something that you would assume he would be able to do against Bivol once he has his timing, once he has Bivol under control like he did in the later rounds. But he didn't do it, did he? It was almost as if Artur Beterbiev knew that it was a predetermined result, that the trilogy was already in the works. That's just what it seemed like to me. So I was dying to say that in the aftermath of the first fight, how it was essentially a work and that it was basically a cynical manufactured trilogy. But I didn't do it. I regret not doing it. I regret not telling you guys my true unfiltered opinions because it's not in the spirit of what I do here on this channel. So I apologise for that, to my long-time audience. But yeah, whatever. The second fight, and it's like I said, it's basically the same fight all over again. Beterbiev landed the better quality shots, probably did enough to win. But what's interesting to me is, and yeah, Bivol got the majority decision this time, setting up the convenient trilogy with Beterbiev, of course, acting very, very, very strangely in the aftermath of the fight, refusing to shake Bivol's hand until he fights him a third time. It seems a little bit rehearsed to me, but basically, if you look at the build-up to the second fight, if you look at all the media interviews, if you look at the betting odds, everybody, and this is in spite of the fact that the vast majority of people after the first fight claimed it was a robbery. The commentators all gave it to, they all pretty much gave it to Bivol, and people were saying that he schooled him and he got robbed, this, that and the other. So you would expect these same people to pick Bivol going into the second fight, but strangely that wasn't the case. Beterbiev was actually a favourite going into the second fight, and me being a little bit cheeky, I made a bit of money on it. I actually bet on Bivol for the second fight. I'm not going to say how much, but yeah, I had a cheeky bet on Bivol for the second fight because he was an underdog. And yeah, if you look at the media interviews, like on the day of the fight, they're interviewing people like Anthony Yard and Anthony Joshua and Teofimo Lopez and all these other clowns, and all of them going into the second fight, everybody, all of the boxing media, all of the pundits are all picking Beterbiev and saying, yeah, he's figured Bivol out this time, and this time he's going to beat him. basically, basically prompting and giving people the incentive to bet on Beterbiev, or for the second fight. That's what it seemed like to me. Yeah, I wasn't falling for that one. So yeah, now we have the obligatory third fight, an obligatory trilogy that was completely manufactured, completely staged, and it just kind of disheartens somebody like me, somebody who's red-pilled, somebody who, isn't fooled by propaganda. It's disheartening to someone like me because I can't just enjoy the sport. I can't just watch two great champions like Bivol and Beterbiev fight and not let my pessimistic nature come out and allow me to see when I'm being scammed, essentially, when I'm being taken for a ride, because that's really what's happening. Look, Artur Beterbiev, this guy never been the distance in his entire career against much stronger, much bigger punchers than Bivol. You look at that first fight very carefully, and like I said, it was kind of a quiet domination. Beterbiev has got foot position on Bivol. He's got Bivol moving excessively. He's got Bivol flailing his arms in front of him, desperate to land something, but he can't really land cleanly. And whenever he lands anything, like if he lands like a scooping uppercut to the body, he has Bivol backpedaling for the next 30 seconds. Clearly, Beterbiev had the ability to shut down Bivol very, very easily in that fight and break him down and stop him. And that's not really a knock against Bivol. I'm not saying he's a good fighter. I'm just saying that in a real fight, where these guys are in there to set about each other and not play pat a cake, this fight isn't as competitive. Bivol gets stopped, let's be honest. So, yeah, it just it stands as another example of how fake the sport of boxing is, how scripted it is. It's another Canelo Triple G situation where you got one guy that's the bigger guy, the bigger puncher, stronger, better technically, better jab, better footwork, quicker feet, just a better fighter in every way. And he's fighting a guy who's smaller, who's a plodder, who's got poor stamina, who doesn't really hit that hard, has struggled with guys half his size throughout his career. And and instead of throwing punches with him, when Canelo throws a big wide looping right hand or a big wide looping left hand where he doesn't protect his chin, where he's not even moving off the line, he's just right there in front of you to be hit. Triple G, who's a seek and destroy type of fighter, a guy with knockout power in both hands, doesn't throw punches with him. No, instead he just leans back, allows him to reset, and then goes back to playing pat a cake. Like, do you guys actually pay for these fights? That's what I want to know. Do you guys pay a lot of money for these pay-per-views and these big events? Because imagine paying that kind of money and then seeing two supposed elite fighters in the sport literally just playing pat a cake with one another. I mean, I don't know how so many people can't see this. I don't know how so many people can't see what a scam the sport of boxing is. It's shocking to me, man. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Bivol Beterbiev. I've actually, truth be told, I've lost a lot of respect for Beterbiev for going along with it the way that Triple G did, and for literally just, again, fighting a guy that's not on his level, either technically or physically. Like genetically, Dmitry Bivol cannot do the things that Beterbiev can do in the ring. He's not strong enough. He doesn't hit as hard, and he can't really compete with him on a technical level either. Right, Beterbiev is still able to land more punches and more effective punches, despite Bivol supposedly being the back foot, classy, textbook boxer. I lost a lot of respect for Beterbiev. I think he conned the boxing fans, and I don't give him. I don't have any faith in him going into the third fight. I think it's just another work. So yeah, manufactured trilogy. That's all I got to say about it. Another thing I wanted to talk about, and this is something that is, I won't say it's going under the radar, but it's not getting as much talk as it really should, and that is the fight between Usyk and Joseph Parker that's being talked about. So Joseph Parker fought on the undercard, and of course he was supposed to be fighting Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois pulled out very, very suspiciously. Like that, I gotta be honest about that. I really wanted to talk about it when I heard about it, but I didn't have the internet access, so I couldn't make a video. I just didn't have the ability to do it. But when it was really on my mind back then, I had a lot to say, and I'm trying to remember. But basically, that pullout with Daniel Dubois was very, very suspicious because he showed up to the media workout the day before the fight. He's hitting the pads. He's looking fantastic, looking in great shape. Like Daniel Dubois is looking better than ever. And, he's giving it the big one in interviews. He's raring to go, looking great. Then all of a sudden he pulls out, claiming that he's ill or something. And then we're starting to hear rumours that he failed a drug test. And I'm like, I thought they didn't even have drug testing in Saudi. Like, I don't know, that it didn't make any sense. It seemed to me, and I think it would be logical to assume this, because Daniel Dubois has shown a serious lack of heart in the past. His bottle has crashed several times in the ring during fights. So this wouldn't surprise me one bit. I think the most likely outcome there is that Daniel Dubois got scared. I think he saw the way that Joseph Parker was looking during his training camp. Because if you guys followed Joseph Parker during his training camp, and I do believe I mentioned this in a comment section somewhere, I mentioned how, although I was picking Daniel Dubois to win the fight, Joseph Parker was looking a lot more focused, a lot more determined, and a lot more, I guess you could say, fired up for the fight than he'd looked ever in the past. Like, if you look at the training videos that Joseph Parker was posting, if you look at even some of the thumbnails and the titles of the videos that he was posting on his YouTube channel and stuff like that, Joseph Parker was talking about becoming two-time heavyweight champion. He seemed to be covering all bases. He wasn't taking any chances. He seemed to be having the best training camp of his career. He'd bulked up for it, gotten stronger. He came in heavy, but he didn't come in fat. He came in bulked up, muscular, as if he's done a good strength program. And he seemed like, during the training camp, and this did occur to me, he seemed like he's sitting down on his punches more. He seemed like he was intent on going in there and putting it on Daniel Dubois and either knocking him out or making him quit. Because kind of the reason I was picking Dubois to win the fight, and the reason why I think most people were, is that Joseph Parker just hasn't shown himself to be reliable in that regard. Joseph Parker has shown himself to be a guy who, yeah, he's a good boxer. He's a good, solid, all-round professional. But what he's not is a guy who is a great finisher. He doesn't have a great killer instinct, as people like to call it. I usually call it finishing instinct. When you have an opponent who's ready to go, when you have an opponent who's hurt, who's tired, who's gassed, who's off balance, and who's looking for a way out, some fighters just have that instinct. They take a step back, they find the opening, they create the opening, and they get it. Beterbiev is a perfect example of that, when he's not fighting a guy he's being paid to go the distance with for a manufactured trilogy. When he doesn't have that, he's that kind of fighter. Bivol is the opposite of that. Dmitry Bivol is a guy who doesn't have that instinct, just like Joseph Parker doesn't have that instinct. So, and again, I've talked about in the past, Kubrat Pulev is another fighter like that, doesn't have that instinct, doesn't seem to know how to finish an opponent. Well, Joseph Parker seemed like he was working on that in the build-up to the fight. He was working on power, working on finding the openings and doing what needed to be done to get the opponent out of there. And that did occur to me during the build-up. So I feel like Daniel Dubois realised he was going to be facing a very, very spiteful and very, very determined version of Joseph Parker. And if you look at what we did get to see of Parker during the Martin Bakole fight, I know you can't really take much from it because Bakole was badly out of shape and didn't have a training camp, took the fight on like 2 days' notice. But just ignoring who he was in the ring with and ignoring the shape that Bakole was in and just looking at what Parker was able to do, Parker was not messing about. I mean, his lead hand control, his jab, and the way that he immediately and very quickly found the home for that overhand right is something you don't normally see from Parker. Like, I've seen Parker go in there and like swing for the fences and miss wildly, like against Hughie Fury and against Wilder. He looked very clumsy in those fights and very uncoordinated. He doesn't usually seem to have a nose for landing a big shot early in a fight. But in that fight, it seemed to me like he was a lot more systematic in the way he went about it. and he found the opening very quickly. And look, I'm not saying that Martin Bakole is like a just having a drink of water. I'm not saying that Martin Bakole is like a defensive wizard or anything like that. But what Martin Bakole does have is a bit of an awkward style. You know, he has that kind of George Foreman cross-armed type of defense. He's quite good at slipping and sliding, rolling with shots, making shots just miss a little bit so that he can counter with a hook or an uppercut. And Parker was able to find that shot on the sweet spot. You know, caught him high on the head, very, very accurate, very, very well timed. And it was a clinical knockout. I thought it was a very impressive knockout from Joseph Parker. And that makes me wonder if he might have been able to knock out Daniel Dubois. Again, I wasn't picking him to beat Daniel Dubois. But based on that knockout against Martin Bakole, I'm starting to wonder if he was going to. And if Daniel Dubois realised it and bottled it, essentially. So that was interesting to me. And I'm very, very excited. Well, quote-unquote excited, because boxing is fake most of the time, right? Let's be honest about it. But I'm very, let's say, for lack of a better word, I'm intrigued by the prospect of Usyk defending his title against Parker. I'm very, very interested in that. And from what I hear, the mandatory there has been called. And I think that's a great fight at this stage. Look, Usyk is better than Parker, no doubt about it. But Parker is a different sort of dynamic to the guys Usyk has been fighting. You know, guys like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, they're big names, big draws. You know, they're Fury's, depending on who you ask, he's like either a legend of the sport or a complete hype job. Same with Anthony Joshua. But like, the thing about those two guys is they're big guys, strong guys, powerful guys, and big names who have made a lot of money in their careers. Parker is a guy who seems to be a little bit more hungry at this stage of his career than those guys, and he seems to be having a bit of a, like we like to call, an Indian summer in his career. Like, he had a patch there where he wasn't looking too good, but at this stage he seems to have rejuvenated himself. He seems to have bulked up. He seems a lot stronger now, physically and mentally, than he was in the past. And I think that loss against Joe Joyce really put things into perspective for Parker. Like, he made that decision. Does he want to just fizzle out now into obscurity, or does he want to go back and retool his game and come back stronger, come back better? I think that's what he's done. So he has a big opportunity here, and this could be the fight of his life. Whereas Usyk, he's already had the fights of his life. You know, he's already had the unification fights, the undisputed fights at 2 weight divisions, lineal champion, 2 weight divisions. He's done it. He's beaten Gassiev, he's beaten Briedis, he's beaten Joshua, he's beaten Fury. He's beaten the elite of his divisions. Against Joseph Parker, can Usyk get up for this fight? Probably. I mean, Usyk's proven so far that he has the mentality to get up for it, but you never know. You never know. It's an interesting situation, and I'm really looking forward to it. I hope this fight happens because, again, look, I'm a fan of Usyk, but I'm not a fanboy. I don't want to see him just have easy fights. I think Usyk, if he is going to keep fighting, I'd like to see him tested. I'd like to see what he's really made of. And I think a fight like Joseph Parker right now will tell us what he's made of. So, very intrigued to see that fight. I hope it happens. Don't want to see him fight Dubois again. Dubois is a chicken, a coward, a bitch, a wimp. He can just get back in line. Well, saying that, he's IBF champion, isn't he? So he can milk that title. He can defend it against whoever he wants. Maybe he could fight at Fabio Wardley or Derek Chisora or someone like that. I don't know, but I'm not. I think Daniel Dubois is a product of corruption. I don't think he should have ever got that title. I don't think he should have even been in that position in the first place. Usyk already dealt with him easily and conclusively. So, I think it's more interesting. And again, we know Usyk can easily beat Dubois because he's already done it. Dubois and Parker are a very different dynamic of fighter, different style. I think Parker might present a few more problems stylistically for Usyk. You know, it's a kind of style he's not dealt with in a while. It's been a while since he fought that kind of boxer and in that sort of shape. So it'll be an interesting fight if it happens. Another fight that I wanted to talk about that I was actually going to go to this fight, but I'm not going to now because I'm going to a different one instead, and that is the fight is the Anthony Kakat versus Lee Wood fight, which is happening in May. And that fight's going to be in Nottingham, so it's a homecoming fight for Lee Wood. Now, that fight's intriguing to me because it's one of them fights where I think it's a good fight, I think it's an interesting fight, and I can see it being a very entertaining fight and a very intriguing one to watch. But I do have a very, very clear idea of how I think it's going to go and who I think's going to win. I think that, as far as I'm concerned, look, the last time that Lee Wood fought in Nottingham, it was a complete disaster. It was the fight he had against Mauricio Lara, the first fight. Now, he had the rematch, which he won conclusively, easily. I think the rematch was probably his career best performance, and that was what he should have done in the first fight, in my opinion, because he was the better fighter of the two. But in the first fight, it was a complete disaster. He got destroyed in that first. Well, he was winning, then he got knocked out. So it was a failure in that regard. But I've got a feeling that history is going to repeat itself because he's fighting in Nottingham again, this time for a homecoming, and I think it's going to go wrong for him. I think Anthony Kakat is more than likely going to beat Lee Wood, probably on points. I don't think he'll knock him out the way that Lara did, because he doesn't have that kind of power, Kakat. But what Kakat does is he has a much better skill set than Lara, and he's also much more physically durable and strong and able to tough it out than Lara is. And I think that strength, that durability, as well as him being a little bit more refined of a boxer than someone like Lara, is going to make him a nightmare for Lee Wood. Now, Lee Wood, of course, last fought when he fought Josh Warrington, and he did not look good in that fight. Now, he had an impressive stoppage. Well, I say impressive. The knockdown was impressive, but the stoppage itself was premature, in my opinion. But prior to the stoppage, he took a pasting in that fight. Took an absolute pasting. He was getting beaten up. He was getting schooled. He lost every second of every round, in my opinion. And he looked on the verge of being stopped himself. If he didn't land that knockdown when he did, I don't think he'd have won that fight. And even if the fight wasn't stopped by the ref, I've got a very good feeling, or a very strong feeling, that Warrington would have come back and would have won the fight. So I think Lee Wood got lucky there with the officials, and I honestly believe that he's going to have a very hard night with Kakat. Now, Kakat was able to beat Warrington, and the difference between those guys, in my opinion, because even though Warrington was the slightly better boxer of the two, just better technically, Kakat was so much stronger than Warrington and so much bigger too, that he was able to just fiddle and maul his way to a pretty clear one-sided victory in that fight. And I struggle to see how Lee Wood is going to deal with Kakat. I really do. I think this is a really hard fight. I think Lee Wood has made a big mistake choosing to fight Kakat for the for his homecoming in Nottingham. I believe the fight is at super featherweight, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe it's for the IBO title. So it is a title shot, but it's a situation where he's got an opponent who may have his number, in my opinion. Kakat is not a great fighter or anything like that. He doesn't do anything particularly well. To me, he's just another example of a fighter who's kind of a solid, consistent, all-round professional who has the ability to just brawl his way to a win, like against somebody who might be technically better. And Lee Wood is a guy who, at this stage of his career, he kind of reminds me of Andy Lee, a guy who took a lot of punishment, wasn't that good technically, but had that get out of jail free card, which was his power. He could just land a big shot, and his knockdowns that he would score were often very dramatic, and they would kind of cause the referees to panic and stop the fight. If you remember when Andy Lee fought Korobov, he was getting schooled in that fight, getting absolutely battered, losing every round, getting completely schooled. And then he landed a big shot, and Korobov just staggered, and it was quite dramatic. He looked as if he was like doing a funny dance off balance. But he wasn't really in any danger of being knocked out. It's just how dramatic it looked caused the referee to panic and jump in and stop the fight. That's kind of the thing that Lee Wood is banking on right now. And I don't think that's going to be enough to get him the win against Kakat. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if Lee Wood was able to win. I mean, he's fighting at home. He's a guy who's come from behind to win before. So, on more than one occasion. Look at the Michael Conlan fight, for example. But let's not pretend that Michael Conlan and Josh Warrington hadn't been knocked out before. Okay, or haven't been knocked out in other fights. All right, we've seen Conlan get absolutely destroyed in the ring, and we've seen Warrington get knocked out before. So let's not pretend that Lee Wood is the biggest puncher pound for pound in boxing. He's not. He has enough power to get him out of trouble if need be in most cases, but I just don't see him doing it against Kakat. I think he loses, probably on points. Now, he might get a gift fighting at home in Nottingham. I know it's difficult to get a decision there. You got to knock him out to get a draw in Nottingham. But, it's a tough ask for Lee Wood. I think Kakat, even in Nottingham, I think Kakat is going to win. That's I hear Canelo is going to be fighting some black German guy. I don't know anything about that. Tank Davis got his ass kicked by some Amero bum, like some feather-fisted black guy, PBC guy that they brought in to be an easy opponent, like Frank Martin. And yeah, he got schooled. He actually got hit in the face. Took a knee, went to the canvas and cried to his corner. Oh, he hit me in the face, and I've got something in my eye. And then the referee was about to score it a knockdown. Then his corner jumped up on the ropes, start wiping his face, and the referee, you can tell he knows he should call it a disqualification, because that's instant grounds for disqualification, but he didn't do it because, he's a black guy in America and he works for PBC, this, that and the other, and he knows he'll be out of a job if he does that. So, he read the script, he went along with it, protected the guy he was there to protect. And, because again, you got to knock him out to get a draw in America, because of corruption and corruption and all that. So, ended up as a draw. So that's another hilarious hype job being completely exposed by a guy who's not even that good as well. That Lamont Roach, I think that's his name, Lamont Roach. I'll be honest, I've never seen Lamont Roach fight. I probably never will. But I've looked at his record and he hasn't fought nobody. He hasn't done nothing. Just another one of these PBC bought and paid for bums, basically. They bought and paid for opponents for their hype jobs. And, that this one went wrong. The cherry pick gone wrong. Don't expect to see Tank Davis fight anybody. Don't expect to see him fight Lomachenko. Don't expect to see him fight another hype job like Haney or whatever. He'll probably just fizzle out into complete obscurity now. So, that's what's been going on in boxing. I'm trying to think if there's any more fights that are up and coming that I want to talk about. I really don't think there's any, but that's my kind of rambling thoughts on the recent events in boxing. I've got a couple of videos planned. I still need to do that video, the boxing commentary video. I don't know where I'm going with that one. I'm trying to make that video and I'm constantly second guessing myself, and I'm kind of getting sidetracked with it and adding and removing. And it's just a video. I meant for that to be done by now, but it's just I don't know where I'm going with it. I'll definitely have it up, probably within the next couple of weeks or so. I'll definitely will have it up, but I just need to make sure I get it right, as well as my top 10 heavyweight video. That's still coming. So for anybody who's still interested, that's still coming. And once I get my internet sorted out, I will see about doing another live stream for anybody who's interested, for anybody who still watches this channel, which probably isn't many of you, but let me know what you guys think anyway. Thanks for watching, and praise be to our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. God bless each and every one of you. Stay vigilant.